If you want to win national championships, linemen are the key. Notre Dame, Oregon, Ohio State, LSU, and more. We're going to explain why the linemen get you to the title game.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day, each and every day, right here on the nation's #1 podcasting network, Locked On. We are brought to you by FanDuel for all the things that are going on. NFL, obviously getting down to the nitty gritty. We got the NBA. We've got all kinds of stuff coming up with baseball. There's a lot of different things. Check it out, FanDuel.com. We're going to be discussing how teams like Oregon, Ohio State, LSU, they find ways consistently year after year to get linemen in the plan. How does it work? That's a little later on in the pod. Right before that, this is something that is discussed all the time. And I work with Coastline 7-on-7. I've been a recruiting analyst for a long time. I talk to college coaches, trainers, etc. This is the debate. Which is more important? Recruiting high school players or the portal? I'm going to give you my take with some statistics. But to open up, and this will tie into both the high school strategy as well as what's going on with Oregon, Ohio State, LSU, etc. Notre Dame is a very good barometer for how to blend high school recruiting with the portal. And make no mistake, Marcus Freeman and his program are doing it with linemen, high school linemen. There's nothing wrong with taking one or two kids here or there, whether it's offense or defense. Notre Dame has done both, but specifically defense here lately. But if you do not recruit high school linemen at an elite level, the chances of you having a great program, sans Indiana, is pretty limited. Indiana's the only one to do anything like what just happened. Like, they are the unbelievable outlier in this. I don't know if there will be another program in my lifetime, and I'm 52 years old, that will do it. So here's why. I'm going to put up a little stat for you that is going to be not just impressive, but interesting, because some people probably don't realize just how many linemen you need to take on offense and on defense. So here we go. This is Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame over the last few years. And again, I'm going to compare Oregon and some other schools as well. There's a lot going on there. But in 2023, the high school class, in 24, 25, 26, here's the deal. Offensive linemen, Notre Dame took 5. The next year, they took 4. They took 4. Then this past recruiting class, they took 6. So a grand total of 19 high school offensive linemen. Okay. Why is that so important? If you speak to any offensive coordinator, head coach, line coach, quarterback coach, I don't care if it's DB coach, you say, what are the most difficult positions to project and B, to coach? You're going to hear quarterback and offensive line over and over and over. It's about numbers. Numbers matter. Those teams that take 2 kids, maybe 3 kids in a class once every 4 years, okay, maybe you can get away with that. When I talk about Oregon, we'll go into that a little bit. But overall, it is about numbers. To put it in perspective, before the 26 class, if you looked at 22 through 25, I want to say Georgia's was 27. Like, it was insane how many offensive linemen they took. And they still took a lot of D linemen too. And let's get to that with Notre Dame. Consistently, Notre Dame recruits a lot of defensive linemen as well. 2023, 4. 2024, 4. 2025, 5. And 2026, 4 again. So they went out and got 17 defensive linemen over the past 4 classes. If you do not find the linemen, you will get your head kicked in. Look what Miami and Indiana did. Let's just talk about their defensive lines for a second. Through the season and then in the playoff before they met each other. Do you think that either of those teams really had, for lack of a better term, any problem just saying, you know what? We're going to turn loose our 4 guys and go get you, even though you're blocking with 5, maybe 6, counting a back or a tight end? No, because they recruited linemen. They let the cream rise to the top, and that's how they got there. That doesn't mean they didn't take enough portal players and didn't supplement here and there, because they did. They supplemented pretty well, but they also didn't have to do things the way that other teams do and overpay in the portal to get them, et cetera. Like, for instance, Ruben Bain was an elite recruit at Miami. That was a 5-star kid in my book. Like, he didn't get ranked that way by everybody because he's 6'1", 6'1.5", if I was to guess. But I think we all know what Ruben can do after seeing what he's done to teams for 3 straight years. Very special player. Boubacar Traore at Notre Dame. Guys at Oregon had so many, it's not even funny. Ohio State, like, good Lord, they've had so many defensive ends the last several years. Those things, if you look at the lists that took place, they're almost all high school kids with the occasional cherry on top portal guy. So do you have enough guys, whatever program you root for, do you have enough guys coming in that are high school offensive linemen and defensive linemen? You want, ideally, just to put it in perspective, 4 each. 1 for each spot on defense, and about every second or third year, a 5 or a 6-man class, kind of like Notre Dame did. Because like high school offensive lineman, man, it is really hard to project. D-line's a little easier, but still, that's what's going on. So for those of you watching on YouTube, what's the total on the right? That's the total number of players. This also puts it in perspective. Just think of it mathematically. 9 out of their 23 signees and 23 were linemen. In 24, 8 of their 23. In 2025, 9 of their 24. And this year, 10 of their 30. They just got a kicker, and Teddy Gerard's being added to the class. It's going to end up being a 30-man class, technically. Notre Dame, its lowest total, percentage-wise, for a lineman was 1/3. So 33.3% repeating. That is how you standardize keeping your team in contention to compete at the top. If you look at A&M, look at this offensive line A&M had this past year. Miami's offensive line, like Cristobal, obviously really respects how it works in the trenches, and hats off to his program. They've got things rolling. I think Miami's here to stay. Georgia, like before Saban left Bama, I don't know enough about DeBoer to really comment on him as O-line recruiting. He hasn't been there long enough. Kiffin is kind of one of the oddballs that has found a way to get a little bit less talent out of the high school realm and still run the ball and stuff because he's such a play caller. He's difficult, and he's had really good quarterbacks that he's developed, and receivers and tight ends too. But even he has had more success when he's had an elite offensive lineman somewhere up front that's going to be an NFL guy. And then he is the portal king. He's done a great job in general. But if you can't answer the following question with yes and with an assertiveness, there's probably not a good sign for your program. And the question is this: is your team getting enough linemen out of the high school ranks? I've done this podcast before, and I wanted to do it right after the portal. And Notre Dame is just one of several teams that I could have used. Again, Georgia might have been the best one. I think, 27 guys, I believe it was, in a 4-year span, high school linemen. Offense, not defense and offense combined. Offense. You must hit on your offensive and defensive linemen, or it's going to be a problem. That's just the way that has to be. So Notre Dame has done a pretty good job of it, and several other teams have as well. But it's not enough teams that I just don't understand this. Why more don't focus on it? It's very odd to me. And maybe that'll start changing because, like, even Indiana for this title run, ironically, Pat Coogan, their center, you know where he was recruited to out of high school? He was a Chicago area kid. He went to Notre Dame. He was their starting center and helping them run those inside zones and different inside runs. Pat. He was a highly recruited kid out of the Chicago area, played for Notre Dame. Then he played his graduate year for the Hoosiers and got a ring. Great for him. Good for Indiana, obviously. But these are elite high school kids. If you're not getting them, it's probably not going to work well. What do we got here in the chat? How big is Onya coming back for Notre Dame? I'll get into that in a second. I actually want to talk about that. But my first initial thought is it is big. Katie, shouldn't you have at least 2 deep O-line and D-line on rotation on game day? That's a great question. O-line, from what I've been told, you can take it for whatever it's worth. O-line, you're going to be lucky to be at 8 guys that you trust. Would you like to be 2 deep? Yeah. There's, like, even as much as Georgia has recruited O-line, because I brought them up earlier, I'll use them as an example. They've struggled. They've got more linemen literally than any program in college football, and they just can't figure it out. And this year they finally got to the point where it's pretty close, but some younger guys beating out older players. It's been wild, but I'm not sure they had 8 they were comfortable with. At Georgia, that would be less than 1/3 of the players that they signed in a 4-year span have worked out. I mean, they've had some guys that keep thinking they're going to make it, and guys are transferring out, et cetera. It's been wild. And that, again, that's Georgia. That shows you how hard it is. And again, this shout out to Indiana. They've broken every metric you can imagine. My friend Bud Elliott that does the blue chip ratio with 24/7 CBS Sports, like Indiana's less than 10%. They've got 7 4-stars, if I remember correctly. If I'm incorrect on that, somebody please post it in the chat. If you're listening to this later, post it on the YouTube page, whatever. But that just shows you how much of an anomaly the Hoosiers really are. So they are absolutely incredible. When we come back, I'm going to discuss why high school is so important for the longevity of your program. I'm not saying you can't win big with the portal individually, but long-term, your greatest chance of success, without a doubt, high school, no doubt. That is next right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the NFL playoffs, the championship games, and everything that coming up. NBA basketball's heating up. We even have some futures on MLB because it's right around the corner. Pitchers and catchers will be reporting. There's all kinds of things you can go with and have a blast with all the stuff that's going on in the world of sport. College basketball right now is hot. Still got 3 undefeated teams, including Miami of Ohio. Check out everything that's going on. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff season long for the NFL. It was for the college football playoffs. FanDuel.com. Get your college football playoff boosts every single game day. We're also going to be talking about the Everydayer Club because if you have not joined, why not? Check it out. $5 a month or $50 a year. Get your audio for free on this podcast and anything you wanted to do across the Locked On Network. Honestly, description down below has a link for the Everydayer Club. Click on it. It'll give you more description. But again, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple, Podbean, wherever you get your pods for free on the go. When you put in your headphones, get them for free. I think that's the best part of it. And there is a Discord description. We'll tell you more. Now let's talk about why high school is so important. This is a big deal to me. I learned this the hard way a very long time ago. I don't remember the year or whatever, but it was mid-90s. There was a couple of kids that transferred from one school to the other, et cetera. And over the years, most of the time I had a great writer by the name of Lou Samoji who covered Notre Dame told me this. He said, usually when a kid transfers, there's a reason. And he just kind of looked at me and smiled. And he's right. Now, I mean, there's some situations where a guy's just in front of you like the year ahead and he's just a dude. Okay, that it is what it is. But usually when a kid transfers, there's a problem. Okay, keep that in the back of your mind. Now, eras change. And in today's world, because of NIL, I think that rule kind of goes way down. And Lou's one of the greatest writers ever. They call it the Lou Samoji board, I believe, on On3's Notre Dame site. Like, he's very well respected. He's a smart guy. May he rest in peace. But I think there's still some of that you have to look into. You have to do your due diligence with the portal, just like you do with high school kids. But here's the difference on bringing in the high school kid compared to the portal. When you get a kid that's 17, 18 years old, I don't care if he's from Atlanta, if he's from Las Vegas, he's from Chicago, anywhere else, you get a chance to mold them in the shape of your program, wherever you are, Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Again, it doesn't matter from the get-go. When a player goes to UNLV or he goes to Tennessee or whatever, and then he transfers, even if he's a dude, like he's proven it, again, let's just use Indiana. That I said earlier that Kiffin is the portal king, and I still believe that in general, but over a 2-year span, nobody has been more concrete, specific, and just dominant than what Indiana has on finding the portal, utilizing it for guys like Toledo, one of their D linemen, et cetera. And then, of course, all the JMU guys, 13 originally and 8 overall came back for this season. They wanted to play for that staff. They believed in that team, and they won a title, went 16-0, first team to ever do it. Here's the thing. They brought in those guys that they already had culturally, like Pons, Aiden Fisher, Surratt, all that. So they were extensions. That was smart. That was very smart. I talked about this recently. If you're going to change head coaches, the guy you bring in, you're probably going to ask him, hey, who are you bringing with you? Indiana's got to set that standard. But let me get back on track here. You're not going to have many situations as good as Indiana's. Even as well as they knew those kids, they couldn't have expected realistically for it to have worked out at that level. Game in, game out, off season, into regular season again. Just like the lights out mentality, as good as Indiana staff was, there's still a little luck with that. You're going to be better off when you blend high school with high school year after year. And this, the cherry on top is the portal. Indiana's had to do more portal because, I mean, I grew up in Indiana. I'm an Indiana grad. Indiana's always sucked at football. That's just fact. Before he got there, I don't know if the total has changed in terms of the ranking. If I remember correctly, Indiana all time has the most losses in major conference football history, maybe even just FBS. Somebody had to correct me, but they're right there at the tip of the wrong category. So they just couldn't get the high school kids. They had to go that route. That was their option, or to be mediocre to bad. So they hit the home run. But if you're a school, especially like, let's use Mississippi State, you're in a very prosperous area. You're on the edge of Alabama. You're up in Northeast Mississippi, Tupelo and Jackson and all those towns. You're not even that far from Tuscaloosa, Birmingham. You're within a 4-hour radius of Memphis, Mobile, like Montgomery. You're in a spot to get players. Can you make that run? I mean, Indiana did it. It'll depend on the coach. Now let's go up another level, like Mississippi State, like Indiana is one of the bottom feeders of the major power conferences. It takes an inside straight. And I don't know enough about their program to say for sure, but can they do it? Could they use high school better instead of taking a few extra JUCO kids and a bunch of portal guys? Yeah, let's talk about somebody else. Let's talk about Bill Belichick, North Carolina. Absolutely, they could. They needed when he first year, and obviously it started poorly, but their defense kind of figured it out. Now they're going to recruit a little better, I think, for this next class. We'll see with 27. But if you look at their roster right now, how many guys are producing, that all guys change out and all that because different systems. I still bet you that at least half their good players were recruited to the Tar Heels out of the high school ranks. That would be my guess. Now, this next season, that could bear a little different. But if they're going to be good consistently, even after Bill is gone, I don't think he'll be there a real long time. My guess is very simple. North Carolina is going to have to hit the high school ranks, and they're in a great state to do it. And their state U shouldn't be that hard if you're North Carolina's head coach to kill it, to honestly kill it. Why not? Why would you have any problem with that? So then when you go into the portal, like Notre Dame, they took 8 guys to the portal class that we're just finishing up here. There's no reason they shouldn't be able to. Big state U's, even if they haven't been quote unquote super successful over the years, Minnesota, North Carolina, Virginia, if you have the right head coach, and I'm not saying you're going to get Cignetti, let's be realistic, but if you have the right head coach for that program, you can get the lion's share of local talent, especially if you're a school like Virginia. It's an elite academic institution. Wisconsin, North Carolina, really, really good state schools. UCLA. I mean, it's a major flaw that UCLA has been this bad at anything with football for this long, but I digress. The point is still the same. You get your base with high school and they learn your system. They learn your culture. When you do bring in portal guys, they will sniff out the problems that you may have missed in your preliminary background checks and as you go through. It'll take care of itself. But if you do not recruit high school at an elite level, probably not going to go real well. You got to have the right people and the right fit that help the staff, that help the recruiting staff, that help the assistant ADs, that help the academic advisors. All of that is roster building 101, and we're learning it on the fly. I'll probably say this a million more times in the next year, but Indiana's the exception that they had portal guys setting the standard because they knew them. I mean, I get that. And again, Cignetti coming over and bringing key guys like Aiden Fisher and Elijah Surratt. Okay, that's what you want, and you shoot for that when you hire a new coach. Like Summerall brought some guys from Tulane to Florida. Alex Golish brought several guys from USF to Auburn. I trust those guys, but it's still not a lock that they're going to fit into these new digs. Like Virginia to Indiana wasn't. I mean, that's a different culture. I lived in Tampa. I know it's way different than Auburn because I'm moving right now in the process. This is my new apartment I'm in here. For those you watch on YouTube, I'm moving to Gulf Shores, and Auburn's way different than Tampa. I can tell you it's about 1,000,000 miles. Will that work? Will that be a guarantee for Alex Golish? I don't know. But now here's why I know he's smart. He's hitting the ground running. I already did a podcast with Zach Blackerby, Locked on Auburn, I put up this week here on the Portal Podcast. They're not jacking around. Some of the kids that I work with Coastline, they're recruiting them. They're recruiting kids from SFE, elite players. Not just good, elite players. That's the difference. I'll bet you money that whatever the total is for Auburn this year for the transfer portal will go down next year because they're going to have a really good 27 class. It'll probably be top 15, maybe even top 8. I'm not sure what their total is going to be, what they're looking for numbers-wise. It's a little hard to guess, but that's how you get it done. When we come back, I want to talk about Oregon, Ohio State, LSU, a few of the teams. I'm going to talk a little bit about my preliminary top 10 teams for next year because a lot of teams aren't quite done with the portal yet. So it's a little vague, but there are 3 or 4 I'm pretty confident. That is next right here on the Portal Podcast. All right, who would you put up as a team that you feel comfortable if they're just going to take a handful of portal guys? For me, I've already talked about Marcus Freeman. They've got 8 guys coming in. They've got some elite players, but they build through offensive and defensive linemen, high school recruiting, consistency year to year, and then they fit over the top. Who are other programs like Freeman and the Irish that are going to put themselves in the top 10 pretty much every year? When I asked myself that question, the first 2 teams that I thought of were Oregon and Ohio State. Georgia probably should have been even before that. To me, the guaranteed 4 programs moving forward in college football, because of how they recruit high school and they use the portal as a supplement, and take your pick on the order, Oregon, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Georgia. And now Indiana's just, they're the anomaly. Those are the 5 programs in college football that I think are going to be right there. The other one I need to see how they handle the portal after the championship game. It's probably 6 is Miami. Those programs, you got the 2 teams that were in the national title this year, 2 teams that were in it last year, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Georgia's kind of self-explanatory, and Oregon's been knocking on the door. Those are the programs. And if you go and look at their recruiting, I'm doing this intentional. I could put up the stats for all of them. Only one I did was Notre Dame, and I want you to literally do it with your own eyes. Type in 2026 Georgia commits, and then just change the year on 24/7 or whatever company you go to, on 3, whatever. Just change the number for the year. Go through and look how many linemen they have. Look at their consistency and balance of classes. High school. Indiana's the only one that hasn't recruited an elite level. And by the way, they've bumped it up. They've already started good for 27. That's changing very, very rapidly. That's how you win. When James Franklin is at Penn State, that's another one that he did. They couldn't get over the top, but high school recruiting was very, very consistent. Linemen, they were very good with it. Obviously, running back, Katron Allen, etc. But they did what they had to in the trenches first out of the high school ranks every year. So before I give my preliminary list of 2026 teams, I have a question for everybody. Who would you add to that list? And these are the teams that I think are the solidified group. Let's call it the Super 6. Indiana, Miami, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oregon, and Georgia, I think are the locks to be in high contention for playoff spots for the next 3 to 5 years. Barring a coach just suddenly retiring or those kinds of things run it, obviously, but you can't project that. Who else would you throw in there? I'm going to give a few possibilities. I think SC is going to make a little bit of a push. They've made a major commitment to linemen, high school. I don't know if it'll be this year, but they'll be in contention for 10 wins this next season. It's pretty tough. 5th-year senior quarterback. Line's going to be better. They'll be one that can kind of get into that groove, and by 27 should. If they don't, then Lincoln Riley it's really screwed it up. But they've recruited well. Who else? Oklahoma might. If they can figure out the quarterback situation, they've recruited high school pretty well, and they've not just supplemented with the portal. A little extra that more than I'd like, but they had to change their roster and their culture and kind of fit their schemes. That's a possibility. LSU, definitely. It's year 1 for Kiffin. I'm going to project LSU to the transfer portal king as a college football playoff team. I haven't even looked at their schedule, but I know they got Levitt. They have a very young offensive line coming back. They need to lose Carius Kern. He's going to Ole Miss. But they've got a lot of good players. And while it's hard to mix, he's the one guy that's done it consistently. And he'll have more talent there than he does at most places. They've got 9 receivers, by the way. And shout out to Winnie Watkins, who was at Ole Miss. It's transferring over. They've just got enough players that know his system that I think they'll be one of those teams. And if they don't make it this year, they'll make it year 2. Year 1 can be hard. Let me ask you this, though. What about Auburn? What about Florida? Well, any team like that, another year 1 team, LSU, I think, is easy, low-hanging fruit. Will they make it? Are they guaranteed? And, of course, the other one everybody talks about because the quarterback is and the brand, Texas. Auburn, Florida, Texas, any of them, should they be considered really likely? I don't know. Obviously, there's a ton of pressure on Bama. I haven't put them in the mix yet here, but they've made the playoff 1 out of 2 years. We'll see what happens with their quarterback situation, but that's dicey. I don't know what to do with them. If you want to comment on Alabama, fire away. I don't have a strong opinion on Bama. Let's see what we got in the chat here. How does having Tiana Gray, Brew, and Anya help with potential matchups on the defensive line for Notre Dame? It's pretty simple. You can mix and match who you play against. Notre Dame is going to be in a totally different situation than most teams because they have way more depth at D-tackle than most. Like Gray's 330-some pounds. Onye's 310 or so. Brew's a smaller guy. He's 280-ish, but he's a one-gap-and-go penetrator. So 3rd and long, Brew's in the game. You take out Gray. Those kinds of things make it a lot easier on a coordinator. Katie, you expend a lot of effort and resources recruiting high school. You can develop them, and then how do you keep them? This is a great question. It's relationships. This is something I've asked people around programs. It's still like, who are you comfortable with? Who do you trust? Some of the kids that I work with, the coastline, I talked to Bryce Woods today. He's an elite corner. He's got a high state offer, et cetera. He's talking about some of the schools he's looking at. Tennessee, Ohio State, Mississippi State. Those are like 3 of his big ones. Like Mississippi State doesn't really fit that, but the DB coach at Mississippi State's an elite recruiter and he trusts him, and that matters. Well, that's the same kind of philosophy. Once you sign a Bryce Woods, a kid that, 6'1" corner that can run, well, you got to keep him because other teams are going to come at him and there's all kinds of cheating. That's just the way it is. If you treat the young man right and you put him in a good spot to begin with, meaning like, hey, man, you're going to fit here out of high school, then you got a shot. You got a shot. But big key, if you do not stay honest, not just when they sign, but afterwards, like chances of playing time, the academic side, the social, anything is off. That's when Katie's question here, and I'll read it again, gets really dicey. You expend a lot of effort and resources in recruiting high school players, you develop them, and then how do you keep them? It's relationships and it's honesty. Sometimes you got to tell a kid, hey, man, you're not living up to your bargain, even if he's a 5-star. That's not an easy conversation. You know who does a really good job of that? And he's got a pretty good record? Kirby Smart. I have never been to a Georgia practice, but I know several people that have, and they tell me the same thing, whether it's a recruit, whether it's a media member, somebody that's a daily recruiting guy, whatever it is, anybody that's ever been to a Georgia practice, they give me the carbon copy, same thing about how Kirby is behind the scenes. That honesty, that forthright mentality keeps players at Georgia more often than not. And they don't pay anywhere near as much upfront money as a lot of other schools. Not even close. But that's how they roll. This is who we are. You may not choose to do it, but this is what we're going to do for you. And this is why. This is our success. This is our plan. Works for UGA. Katie, should there be a cap on the number of portal players you can take each year? Wow, I never thought about that one. I'm going to come back to that. That is a great question. Jimmy Satterfield, 734, Bama and Georgia. Those are 2 programs that I think are right there, but I need to, let me hedge on that. Georgia, I think, is easy. Bama, are they doing it right with high school? And this is what I mean. It's not the numbers. This is a very picky thing that I'm bringing up. With Bama, You're talking about a program that just didn't use their linemen right last year. It's kind of the opposite of how this normally works. But you had Caden Proctor at left tackle, and you couldn't run the ball for crap. I don't know how you're going to pitch O-line recruiting to some of the elite kids that just don't want to go to Bama automatically. And I'm sure there are probably several because they're Bama fans in Deep South Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Ford, whatever. They'll get a few. But how are you going to pitch that? So that comes into play, and that is a really weird thing to say, especially after the Saban era. But that was rough. Katie, Georgia, Ohio State, and LSU. Georgia for me is right there. Absolutely. Ohio State's definitely my list, and I think LSU's on that cusp. The only thing I'll say about LSU, kind of like I said a minute ago, just to solidify my answer, this is year one for Kiffin. I'm going to give my top 10 in a moment, and I'm going to put LSU in it. Based on my metrics, though, it doesn't make sense. If you get up over 20 portal players, it gets difficult to make the playoff. If you give up over 25, it's almost – he's at like 38, 40, somewhere in that range. They have flipped that roster. I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but LSU is intriguing. So with that, here are my teams, and I'll probably change this every few days because as the portal moves on and guys go into the portal, guys turn pro, all this, there are a few programs I'm giving a little bit of an edge to, and there are a few teams that I'm not. Here are the teams in my top group I'm pretty steadfast with, but Miami, we don't know what's going to their portal. I'm going to put in my top 10. I trust Cristobal. LSU's not done. We need to see some things. They're going to be in my top 10, but here's my top group. Number one's Ohio State. It's kind of self-explanatory. A lot of key guys coming back, and they have Jeremiah Smith. If you want to argue with that, you can go right ahead. For those who don't know, I am not an Ohio State fan in the least. It's one of my least favorite programs, but I think they're going to be the favorite to win it next year. Just my opinion. Number two, I've got Notre Dame because they have the most balanced roster. They don't have Jeremiah, but they've got a ton of receivers now, two of which came over from Ohio State, and they added Tiana Gray. They added Brew, and they got Jason Onye back as a sixth year. This is the only time in my life, literally, and I'm 52, that Notre Dame is this deep at defensive tackle. They are loaded. They've got Boubacar Traore, Keon Keeley, Bryce Young. They have several NFL-level talents up front. This will not be an easy team to run or pass on, and then their secondary will be the best in the country, possibly. CJ Carr will be in the Heisman race. O-line's loaded. The only question that I really have is Charles Jagusa, if you follow recruiting from a few years ago, is he going to be healthy? If he is, you could make an argument for Notre Dame number one. Number three is Indiana. They just got Josh Hoover at quarterback. Do you discount the idea that Indiana is going to figure out the portal quarterback? They've hit 2 for 2. And they just won a national title with Mendoza. Yeah, I think Hoover is going to do really well. They've got a really good running back coming from BC. Need to see what they can do in the portal with O-line. They got the Bruner kid coming from Wisconsin. Need to see that. I'd like to see them get one more lineman. We'll see. But they shouldn't be too bad. And, man, they've got some good young receivers. Their defense is going to take some hits. Aiden Fisher is not going to be easy to replace, etc. But I trust their staff. I haven't went through their portal list completely. But adding Nick Marsh at receiver, etc., that staff figures it out. If there's anybody on my list, and if you wanted to put Indiana number one, I wouldn't even have a problem with it. But if there's anybody on my list, I'm going to trust their evaluations. It's IU. They've earned it, no doubt. 4 is Georgia. If you have to question that, I question your sanity. If as a college football fan, it's Georgia. It's Georgia. It's not that hard. Oregon and Texas are 5 and 6. I'll put Miami and LSU at 7 and 8. And then when you get to that point, this is where it's interesting. Alabama and Oklahoma would probably, and take your pick, and that's about where they were this year, would be my next. But there's still several other teams I'm curious about. BYU, they'll have an experienced quarterback. They could be right on that cusp. What about some of the other teams like USC? That's a possibility. If you want to put USC at like somewhere between 8 and 12, that would be fine. Maybe put SC at 11. I think they're a team that is going to get better as next season goes on with some of those younger linemen play. Go check out their recruiting class. It's insane. But I got them at like 10, 11, right in there. You can argue one way or the other. Then like number 12, let's just say we're at that point. again, I'm going to go A&M because I got Marcel Reed. So my list isn't shocking by any means, and it's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be. If you wanted to put Tennessee in there, I'd be okay with it. If you wanted to throw somebody else in there that's a little bit outside the box, you can fire away with it. But early on, those are my teams. And if you've got an opinion about somebody, fire away. Texas Tech, I need to see where they're at. You could definitely put them in the top 5 to 8 if you wanted, but I haven't looked at their, just full disclosure, they're probably going to end up in my top 8. I haven't looked at their portal class at all. So I'm not going to rank them. It's nothing to do with Tech. I just haven't had a chance yet. There's a lot to go through. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I'll do Tech tomorrow. That'll be a fun team because they do a good night. They do a great job with evaluating the portal well. And maybe they'll be in my list. I might change my list tomorrow and talk about it tomorrow. But Texas Tech's probably somebody that'll get put in there. I just literally have not looked at them yet. But this is going to be fun, man. We're starting to see some slight changes from year 1 to year 2 of the playoff. The 4 teams from the first year had 35 portal players from that exact season. Penn State, in Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Texas, 35 total portal players. Indiana had over 20 this year by themselves, and they won it. So we've seen a major shift, but that's with one team. I think Miami was around 19. That's a little higher. So you can do it, but it's the quarterback position's the key if you're going to go that way. Did you hit a quarterback? Did you get lucky with someone like Coogan with Indiana? But overall, the theme that I started with is still the same one. I think this year is going to be an outlier. We'll see if I'm right in like 5 years. High school recruiting is number 1, especially offensive and defensive linemen. So let's see here. Let's come back to this. Should there be a cap, this is from Katie, on the number of portal players you can take each year? Man, I'm going to say no, because there needs to be an asterisk by it, because there are going to be certain situations where teams just like, look at Iowa State. They got rated by Penn State. So that's why it gets a little iffy. There needs to be like a baseline. Maybe it's 35. That way you're not running off players. I think that's something you can talk about. But when you get all your players rated, well, how do they apply that? Because Iowa State wouldn't be able to field a freaking team. They lost over 20 guys just to Penn State. So that's tough. Katie, that is maybe the most difficult question I've ever been asked on a podcast. You talk about litigation city. You try to put a cap on it, you get sued. That's the other thing. That's why it probably won't happen. Somebody would sue the NCAA. You know how much they love to avoid litigation. Jimmy, Bama and Georgia. That's your comment about LSU. Oh, this is a good one. Irish Eye 77. Talking about Notre Dame. Jag just on Kedron Young. Yeah, for those who don't know, Kedron Young's a big running back out of Texas. He's 235 pounds. He tore his ACL. That's an important player for Notre Dame next year. Jimmy, where do you have Oklahoma at? Right on the cusp of top 10. Like, I need to look at their portal class more, and I'm going to do one team pretty much a day. Today, talked a little bit about Notre Dame and Oregon. Like, Oregon, they didn't take a ton. Matter of fact, let me throw out Oregon's numbers. I forgot to do that. This is what Oregon did at high school recruiting, and we'll talk about portal. High school offensive lineman, 5, then 4, then 4, then 3. Defensive lineman, you ready for this? This is insane. 2023 class for the Ducks, 10, 6, 2, and 4. So they took 22 defensive linemen over the last 4 years. That's insane. It's really interesting with Oklahoma because I don't think it's about high school recruiting in the portal. It's just their quarterback. John Mateer's got to figure out post-snap reads and letting it rip when it's not obvious. He's got to throw guys open. I think he's a tad late on a lot of his throws, and that's why they struggle at times. Kid's wide open, or it's a basic dig route. That's your number one guy. He can rip it. He's got an arm. He's got to get better with his post-snap stuff. Surprised Notre Dame got another kicker yesterday. You know what? I think they said, screw it. They took the kid, like he was committed to Michigan. They flipped him or whatever. They took a pretty good player. They had a game where they missed 3 extra points last year. Look, you can say whatever you want. When you miss 3 extra points, that's a problem. They're just trying to hit. And I'm guessing Notre Dame, out of the 105, 95 to 97 of them will be scholarship guys. That's my guess. They're taking one of those extras as a kicker. They took the Schmidt kid last year from Wisconsin. This young man's from Illinois. I forget his name. My apologies. Supposed to be a really good kicker. He was going to go to Michigan. Notre Dame flipped him. That's a pretty good situation. I think they need a cap on how much you can spend. Let me hit this on two fronts. Number one, that's a great idea. Number two, it's zero chance of enforcing it because, once again, the NCAA is toothless and they don't want to get sued in litigation. Don't get me started on that. So 240. What is 240? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Irish Eyes. KD, Miami already has 10 players in the portal, including Emory Williams. It is what it is. Emory's a great kid. Good luck to him wherever he goes. I knew him in high school. Makes me wonder if Schmidt is staying. He may not be. He sucked. Well, a little bit he got to really try it, but he's got a cannon for a leg. Holy cow. But if you're not accurate, what difference does it make? Not much. Not much at all. To that end, we'll see. Oh, I got you. Keedron Young is 240. Okay, yeah, he's a big dude. Kid out of East Texas. Really good running back. Let's talk about one last thing here. I'm going to do some teams coming up. I'm going to do Texas Tech tomorrow. I think that's not a guarantee, but 90% tomorrow's Tech. If you're in the chat, throw out a few teams you want my evaluation of how they're blending portal, high school. I'm just going to try to do like one team a day, then maybe a couple of teams compare. And every day we'll have somebody to talk about doing it this way. And I think it's fun. I think it's a lot of fun. Because while Notre Dame and Oregon have their path, it's not the only one, obviously, with Indiana, what Miami did. Between them, they had over 40 portal players. You can do it, but you got to have some key cogs up front. Who would you like? Texas Tech. I'm not going to do LSU right away because Kiffin's not done, just so everybody knows. I'm super excited to do LSU, but that's a week to 10 days away. It needs to be teams that are closer to done or already done. Ohio State I'll probably do very, very soon. Maybe I'll do them this weekend or early next week. And then when we talk about this, say a week from today, I could see us maybe even going to a point where I do 2 shows a day like this, maybe do a couple live shows a day. It's possible. I'll be completely moved in at this point next week in my apartment in Gulf Shores, and I'll have more time to do this kind of stuff. Right now, I got stuff. Holy cow, I got it everywhere. My office is a disaster. I'm just sitting on my green couch having a nice time here at this podcast. But after I get everything done, I'm going to start probably doing 2 podcasts a day till we get all the teams done in the P4. Might even do a couple of teams G6 because I think it's really fascinating. USF with Brian Hartline. You dang right, I'm going to do that one. That's exciting. And we're going to talk about a lot of 7-on-7. Coastline Stars, the team I work with. We got a bunch of kids going to talk about that kind of stuff. But who do you want to hear about? I'm going to do let's go with Texas Tech tomorrow because they're fascinating. If they add a couple more, I can talk about them later. Ohio State's coming up. Those are 2. Anybody else that we think we should do? Jimmy, Oklahoma. Question for you, Jimmy, and I honestly don't know this at all. Do you think Oklahoma is done? And if they're not, to help me out, what do you think they need to add a player or 2? What position? Katie, Georgia, Miami. You have teams to talk about. Georgia's straightforward. I'm curious to look at. I haven't really delved into their portal class. They're kind of like Notre Dame and Ohio State and a few other teams. They don't take a ton, but when they take somebody, there's a reason. Curious about them. Miami, I want to do, but I want to wait just a little bit, kind of like LSU because they were just in the title game. Let's see who leaves. They're about a week out. Florida, absolutely. Absolutely. Virginia Tech, that's a good one. Katie, I like that. I like that a lot. Have you seen Mark Edwards' son play yet? Just on film. For those who don't know, Mark Edwards played at Notre Dame from 93 to 96, I believe it was. He's a kid that played at Norwood, Ohio. Remember, he was a big-time recruit. His son plays at the Bowl School in Jacksonville. He's an elite dude. I haven't seen him live, but I don't know if I'll ever see the Bowl School play live, but he was pretty good. Yeah, Eric Indy, Mark was a hell of a player. Played in the NFL for a little while, too. Good football player. His son probably has more athletic gifts. Anybody else that you want to hear about? I'm not going to lie. The one I'm curious about more than any other, got to wait a little bit. Indiana. Every kid that Indiana signs now every year, I'm going to dive into that. 100%. They evaluate for them. Doesn't mean that kid would do great in another school or whatever. Every young man they take, they seem to find a place for him, whether it's just a substitute role as a D end or a specialist on, punt team, whatever. Man, they figure it out. Let's see here. Heard he broke the rushing record for a game. Yeah, he had like 500 and some yards or something like that. No, I still think they need one more lineman and maybe another running back. This is Jimmy. He obviously follows Oklahoma. The offensive line is interesting because here's something that I was told by somebody who covers Oklahoma. John over there at Locked On Sooners, I asked him about this. He says they need more linemen, but it's hard to convince anybody to come to be a backup. And he's right. They got a ton of young linemen. They're in an awkward spot because they're in the Southeastern Conference. Just taking a kid from the Ivy League or the MAC or something, that doesn't work. You got to have guys. So that's tough. All right, we're going to cut it off there. I appreciate everybody for stopping in again today. Been a lot of fun. And if you take nothing else from this podcast, linemen, recruit linemen, high school linemen. Notre Dame and Oregon were my barometers today. Ohio State does it well. Texas does it well. Georgia's ridiculous. If you recruit linemen, you have a better chance long term. We will see you again tomorrow on the Portal Podcast.